I'm still in the mindset that I was in 2008 when Chris and I went bankrupt.
Which is, I need to get as
scarcity.
Yeah. Man, really?
Yes, that's the big insight
No
I've
way.
had during this pandemic. Yeah.
Shut up.
Shut up. We're going to talk about it.
No, I'm just saying shut up because that's crazy to hear you say that.
Well, yeah, because we shouldn't be talking. We should just be going. Well, you're recording all this, so you can put it any way you want.
Yeah, we could add it in here, but
no, honestly, so if you get into a situation where you nearly lose everything, and look, I know you've been on your sister's couch, you've been down and out, you've had to reinvent yourself. We could be the reinvention twins, the two of us.
We could be.
Yes, and the thing is, though, is that if you get in that moment where you can't pay for groceries, where you think your car is going to get repossessed, where you can't pay for your kid's town soccer league, like that is low. When as a parent, you can't provide what you want to provide for your kids. You don't ever want to be in that situation again. And so when I started to claw my way out of that, Lewis, and I started making money and Chris started getting his restaurant business back on the rails, I mean, we were still $800,000 in debt. It was 3 years worth of trying to make the ends meet. And when I gave that TEDx talk in 2011, that was 3 years after I discovered the 5-second rule. I had a full-time job with benefits, and we were still massively in debt. There were still liens on the house. And after that TEDx talk, which is what launched the speaking business, as people started to book me and I started making money, I was like a squirrel with a freaking nut, man. A dollar came in, I'm like, put it away, put it away, put it away,
Right.
put it away, put it away. And every time a speech came, you know what everybody said as I started to explode on the speaking circuit is, oh, speakers get hot. You're going to be the hot speaker in, 2017, and then take everything you can get. And I just
they're
said
on to
yes.
the next speaker. Yeah.
And so I figured I was just a fad. And so I said yes to everything. And I have become addicted to being busy. And it is driven, when I'm present, from making an impact. But if I'm honest, it is mostly driven from that mentality from 2008, the fear that this could all disappear.
Wow. We both went through our own, I guess, identity shift and dream death or ego death in 2008 with me from football and you with your career and everything. To give people context, because I'm just going to roll with this from what you just shared. Mel Robbins has been a friend of mine for years. You've come and spoke at the Summit of Greatness. You've been on the show a few times before, and you've exploded in the last 4 years, really, with everything you've been talking about, from speaking to the 5-second rule to the Mel Robbins show, which was a big hit. But then, in the middle of pandemic, that dream just ended, and we're talking about, a big revelation for you, which is scarcity. And this is something we teach all the time, to be in abundance and don't have a scarce mindset. But you're saying that you feel like you've been in scarcity still for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
In some way, obviously abundance of I can do everything, but in some way you felt.
Yeah. There have been modes where I've said yes to things, Lewis, because I've been afraid that all of my good fortune would disappear. And if I had to take a look at one of the biggest lessons from the pandemic that COVID-19 created, I call it the Great Pause, where all of us were forced to take a gigantic pause from our everyday life. And I need to qualify what I'm about to say by also saying that we have not lost a family member. We have not had we don't have anybody. My dad is retired, so we don't have an essential worker at a hospital or a grocery store. So yeah. I am speaking about the impact of COVID-19 without having lost a loved one. And so the Great Pause that basically had my talk show end abruptly. We got 5 minutes notice. We're told to evacuate CBS Broadcast Center. And all of a sudden, it was over. 139 people, no goodbyes.
Oh my goodness.
175 shows, no thank yous. We finished taping. I walked into the control room. My executive producer, Mindy Borman, turned to me and said they found COVID in the building. She started tearing up. Everybody, this has been remarkable. It's a wrap. We are the last show in the building. CBS let us finish taping. They're sealing off the building. I literally ran up
in the middle of a show.
Yes,
No.
This was March 11th, and we had already stopped down audiences, and so I ran upstairs to the apartment in CBS, which was like our green room. I grabbed everything that was possibly not nailed down. Don't tell Sony I took a bunch of the blazers, and I'm still a farm girl from the Midwest at heart. Grab them, go. Who's going to know that they're missing? And so and that was it. I mean, it was so awful because it felt like the biggest dream of my life, which was to host a daytime syndicated talk show and give advice to people 5 days a week on television who had no access to therapy, didn't have the time for personal development, make it entertaining, accessible. My whole dream, boom, in 5 minutes flat, done, no completion, disruption. That was it. And then 2 days later, Houghton Mifflin, which was my publisher for my next book, started laying people off, and they called me and said, we need to cancel the book contract.
No, I did not.
Yeah, they did. Well, in their defense, Lewis, I was a year late in delivering.
Okay, yeah. So if you would have done it on time, yeah, it'd have been out.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
You had a talk show to do.
Dyslexia strikes again.
Exactly.
And then it started to be like, this speech is canceled, and this speech is canceled, and this speech is canceled. And basically, once Microsoft announced that there were no events happening until June 2021, the speaking business, at least the corporate speaking business, is basically on hold for in-person events for over a year. And in a matter of a week, I saw my entire runway shut down. And what's so interesting is you and I have both, in 2008, like so many of your listeners, the first recession just rocked my life to rock bottom. And when rock bottom hits, you don't have to hit with a thud. Oftentimes when you hit bottom, you bounce. And that's where I think the power is, that when the world feels upside down, you always have the power to make it right. When one chapter ends, you always have the power to write a new one. When, you feel like nobody loves you, you have the power to learn how to love yourself. And if there's one thing that COVID-19 has done, regardless of whatever devastation it has caused in your life, is it has forced us all to experience the great pause. And I read that in a Medium article, and I loved that idea of a pause, because I think in 2020, our lives have gotten so fast and so digital. And when you are forced to pause and get present and to slow down, you are reminded of what's actually important. And what's important is your health. What's important is your family and your friends. What's important is whether or not you are taking care of yourself and thinking positive thoughts versus negative thoughts. The world gave us a gigantic experiment where we got to practice and get to continue to practice the most important skill on the planet, which is emotional resilience, the ability to face hard and actually be okay, the ability to face the uncertain and redirect your attention on things that you know that are certain. And so I am so grateful that we had this time, because when I think about my family, so we've got a 21-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 15-year-old, we will never get these 10 weeks back again. It was a gift. As much as our two daughters who are in college were complete when they got home, it was a gift.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, for that generation, by the way, for them to learn, the generation where everybody gets a trophy, that the things that you love can be taken away like that. that there are things in life that are way more important than your prom or rush
graduation
or graduation. Not to say that you don't deserve to mourn those things, but the perspective check that you got from COVID-19, and it really hit home because one of our daughters has a very close friend in college whose dad died, who's my age, and no prior conditions, nothing. And I think when change hits and it's personal, that's when the perspective shift comes. And so between COVID-19 and the fight for social justice that we're seeing with the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the protesting going on, it's been a really remarkable moment of time. If you pause for a minute and you reflect on the opportunity of this moment.
What is the opportunity?
The opportunity is to unlock the power that's inside you to create a better future for yourself, for your family, for your body, for your mind, for your spirit, for this country, for this world, for your community.
Yeah. I always talk about, since I experience many breakdowns, whether it be a physical breakdown or relationship breakdown or family breakdowns, I feel like in order for us to really see clearly, we need to break down in a big way. It's hard to make big changes when things are good or when they're so. It's even when it's like, it's not good, it's hard to make changes. It needs to be devastatingly challenging for a lot of us. Some of us maybe can make changes all the time, but for most people, there needs to be some devastation or near devastation, either personally or close to you, to say, oh, let me reevaluate, let me pause, like you talked about, and start creating a better future for myself. Why do you think that is in human beings, that, if things are going bad, we won't change? If they're going good, we won't change, but it's almost like we need a massive breakdown, near-death experience, divorce, COVID, for us to see clearly to start changing?
Well, there's a really simple answer: patterns. So the thing about all human beings is that we are pattern learning machines. And if you feel stuck or broken, I guarantee you, while you feel that way, you're not. You have a pattern of behavior or a pattern of thinking that is broken. And we need to be disrupted because we love our patterns. And even people that I know, like
even when we're in pain, we love the pain.
Pain's familiar for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, like you may be listening to Lewis and I talking, and you grew up in a super chaotic household. Maybe your parents argued all the time. Maybe your dad or mom were in and out. Maybe there was a lot of fighting. Maybe there was actual abuse. I don't know what was going on, but it was chaotic as hell. And so as an adult, you have vowed to yourself, you are not going to repeat that pattern. But what ends up happening is, because as a little kid, you absorbed the pattern of chaos in your nervous system, unless you go about the intentional work of breaking the pattern of chaos, you will create it in your own life because it's what's familiar. You won't understand, why do I keep dating these assholes? Why do I go to these bosses that treat me like crap? Because you don't know what it feels like to be in a relationship with either a boss or a romantic partner or a roommate that is consistent. Because for the first 18 years of your life, you lived in a state called, when's the next shoe going to drop?
Right.
And so wherever it is in your life that something is broken, there is a pattern that you don't see yet that is making you continue to stay in a broken situation. And so one of the things that you just asked, which is, why is a perspective change or losing a job or something like that that's so disruptive? Because those sorts of things, COVID-19 breaks every pattern.
Yes.
Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
Yes. Black Lives Matter breaks patterns of thinking that you weren't even aware that you had about privilege or being anti-racist, or what your Black colleagues and friends and relatives deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so having a breakdown is one of the biggest things on the planet, because what you get is you get a break from your own bullshit, and you can look objectively at where you are, and for the first time look ahead and say, well, what do I want to go create? And 9 times out of 10, if you're discouraged right now, if you've got financial devastation, if you're facing something, that is making this moment in time as hard for you as life was for Lewis and I in 2008 during the last recession, I beg you, ask yourself honestly if what you had is actually what you wanted. The thing that you just lost, that job that you bitched about all the time,
a relationship that was bad to you. Yeah.
Yes. Or the friends you can't hang out with because it's convenient and you're in quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, actually ask yourself if this is what you wanted, or were you just used to it? Being used to something, Lewis, I think is the biggest reason why people don't change. I asked my mother, I love my mother. I love my parents. They've been married 51 years, which is a feat because my mom was a teen mom. But I asked her once if she'd go to a personal development seminar with me.
What'd you say?
Are you kidding me? Why would I want to change at my age?
Oh, wow.
I might discover I hate my life.
Wow.
I was like, okay, I'm just going to leave that right there.
Right. I mean,
I think being used to what you have. I mean, I even our son is, so I'm here in Vermont at my mother-in-law's place, and our son is going to go to high school in Vermont. And so we're going to kind of split our time back and forth between my mother-in-law's place and our place in Boston, because God knows what business is going to be like. And, why would you need an office after COVID-19? Right. Another amazing thing to realize, even that change, I notice my own agitation, my own anxiety coming up. Will I make friends? Will I like a slower lifestyle? What happens if Chris likes it up here and I hate it up here? My own mind, because it's not something I'm used to yet, is making up stories to cling to the old way of life. This is a moment in time, everyone, please. This is the greatest gift. The greatest gift is this moment of pause where you get in touch with what you actually want. And if you don't have the skills, for crying out loud, look around and take an online course, because if you need skills to prepare yourself for the thing that you want, get them right now.
What do we do when we're in the face of so much uncertainty?
Well, when you are in the face of so much uncertainty, which we all are right now, what you have to do is you have to win the battle that you can win, which is the battle with your own mind. You see, you can't control what governments are going to do. You can't control the price of oil. You can't control what COVID-19 is going to do. You can't control what's going to happen a month from now, 2 months from now. You can only control what you're doing right here, right now. And so if you have the propensity to get triggered by the unknown, which most human beings do, you have to fight to focus on the stuff you do know. So right now in this moment, you know what I know? I know that if you're watching this conversation, you're safe. I know that you have access to the internet. I know that you're still alive. And so safety and health is the number one thing that if you have that covered, you can focus on this moment and bringing your mind back to this moment and saying, I may not know what's going to happen. I may not like how people are handling it, but I do know that I am safe right now and that I will be able to face whatever is coming. When you start to get into the pattern and the habit of spinning thoughts about what's coming, you will lose the battle with your mind. Your health will tank, your mood will tank, your relationships will tank, your outlook will tank. It all begins with making a decision that you are not going to allow that shit in your mind. That is the one thing that you can control. And what's happening for so many people right now is that our moods and our decisions and our thought patterns actually begin in our bodies. So our nervous systems are hardwired to trigger certain thinking patterns. And it dates back to patterns that you learned when you were a kid. So if uncertainty for you as a kid meant, uh-oh, is dad coming home and drunk? And do I need to be on edge? And I get hyper vigilant so that I don't get in the crosshairs? Or maybe uncertainty was, uh-oh, mom seems a little critical. Is she disappointed? Is she upset? Am I going to get in trouble? And so you developed this propensity to start to worry about what's coming. The second, as an adult, you get into a situation where you start to feel like you don't know what's coming, before your mind even realizes it, your nervous system recognizes it, because your mind may have forgotten the pattern, but your body sure remembers it. And boom, this kind of habitual worrying can take over like that. So you're not only dealing with the triggers that are in the present moment, you're dealing with past patterns of thinking, whether it's worry or anxiety, or it's perfectionism or procrastination or hypervigilance or assuming something bad is going to happen, whatever it may be, that is getting triggered for people at a profound level. And so what I want to do today with you is I want to give you some simple tools so that you can create some psychological distance, just a micro moment between the thing that triggers you. Let's create a little moment, a pause, if you will, where you can have self-awareness and where you can insert a moment of control, and then hand you the tools to redirect your mind to something positive. Because here's what I know. This isn't going to last forever. I know that oil prices may momentarily tank, but when we flatten the curve, we will go back to life and people will need oil. I know that there's going to be a lot of people that really suffer because they lose their jobs or they lose their homes or they are struggling to find the basic supplies. One good thing about what's happening right now is this is not happening just to you. This is a global crisis and there are a tremendous number of resources out there. So you can focus on all the shit that you can't control, or you can focus on this moment and the fact that right now you're healthy and okay. And then you can develop a mantra from this moment to remind yourself to calm your ass down and focus on the fact that if something bad happens, you will face it then.
I love that response. I love that. What is this tool? I'm curious to know now. What is this tool that you're going to teach us? Can we get into that?
Yes. So the first thing that I want everybody to do is you've got to be able to see or name the thing if you want to tame it. So if you just take out a piece of paper and you write down everything on a simple piece of paper or in a notebook that triggers you to worry, to feel anxious, to be uncertain, that's number one, because part of what we need to teach you to do is you can see this stuff coming. If you don't label all the things that trigger you, then what's going to happen is your nervous system gets triggered, which then takes you into a worry and an anxiety, a fight or flight adrenaline response that hijacks your mind. And before you know it, your thoughts are scrambling and it's hard to bring yourself down once your thoughts go haywire. So I want you to write down all the things. For me, my biggest moments of anxiety are first thing in the morning. And I have tremendous experience with this personally. So I struggled with anxiety for 25 years. I was medicated for it. The medication saved my life. I had such severe postpartum depression when our first daughter was born, who's now 21, that I couldn't be left alone with her. That's how scary it was. So my expertise comes not from studying this, it's from living this and having to figure out how to save my own ass from my own mind. And about 6 years ago, I started using something I called the 5-second rule to interrupt my thoughts that were negative, that would send me spiraling, and drag my mind to consciousness, to the prefrontal cortex in 5 seconds flat. And I trained myself to start to rewire my own patterns of nervous system gets triggered, my mind goes haywire. I interrupt it using what I call the 5-second rule. I'm going to teach it to you in a second. I draw my focus back to my prefrontal cortex, which gives me immediate control of what I'm thinking. And boom, I drop in what I call an anchor thought to anchor myself down. So the first step of this is I want you to write down everything that triggers you. For me, waking up to a new day where there's a lot of uncertainty or something's going on, facing all of that is where my anxiety comes. And, I hit rock bottom in my life 11 years ago. My husband was in the restaurant business. It was going under. We were $800,000 in debt, about to lose the house. I was drinking way too much because numbing your problems is the easiest way to deal with them, but it backfires. Go ahead.
So Mel, this situation you're in, I mean, this situation the world is in, you've been here. Because I read your
Oh
bio
yeah.
when your husband was
Oh
starting that
yeah.
pizza restaurant, and you guys were
Yes.
$800,000 in the hole, almost
Yes.
losing your money, almost losing all your
Well, no
savings.
money. I mean, I couldn't pay
Right.
for groceries. The bankruptcy letters were coming. The car was about to be repossessed. We had 3 kids. I was unemployed. It was so bad. I could not get my ass out of bed. I was 41 years old, and I never thought that my life would turn out like this. Just like, look, you didn't choose to be in this situation with this pandemic, but you can choose
Right.
how you build a response to it. And that's where I need you to focus all of your energy, all of your thoughts, that you didn't choose this anxiety crock pot we're all cooking in, but we can choose how we insulate ourselves from the uncertainty, and we build emotional resilience, and we ground our minds. And so I couldn't get out of bed. I mean, I would hit that
How long
snooze
ago
button.
was this, Mel?
11 years.
Wow.
So I couldn't get out of bed. The alarm would ring. I'd hit the snooze button 4 or 5 times. My mind would be full of all of the problems, all of the uncertainty. How the fuck am I going to get out of this? I'm the worst mother. The kids have missed the bus. I hate my husband. I'm a failure. All of it. It was like the weighted blanket psychologically keeping me in bed. And so my life changed, and you can change your life with one decision. In fact, I think we're all just one decision away from a totally different life. And if you make the decision today, after watching this and listening to this, to change how you think, your whole life will change. And so what happened for me is one night I was watching TV, and I was giving myself this little pep talk, like, all right, I got to pull it together. I got to stop drinking. I got to find a job. I got to stop screaming at my husband. I got to start talking to my friends. I got to do something. I got to change. And I see this rocket ship launch across the television screen. And it gave me this crazy idea that maybe if I launched myself out of bed, if I move fast enough, maybe I'd move fast enough and I'd be gone before the anxiety and depression hit. Maybe there was a window of time where you could move before the anxiety and depression, boom, takes you down. Now, look, I had 4 Manhattans that night, so I was pretty plowed because it sounds like a stupid idea. You know what I'm saying? But for whatever reason, I'll never forget it. It was a Tuesday morning in February outside of Boston, Massachusetts. That alarm went off. And here's the thing I want everybody to understand. Your whole life comes down to micro changes. And these changes happen in a 5-second window. There's a 5-second window between feeling the terror of this moment and finding courage, or feeling the terror of this moment and having a panic attack. There's a 5-second window between feeling motivated to go for a walk or to sit down and focus. And 5 seconds later, you've talked yourself out of it. Everything happens in this 5-second window, and that's where the power is. So that morning, Tuesday in February, 11 years ago, the alarm goes off. Now, I immediately remembered I should get out of bed. Just like you know exactly what you should be doing, or the small things that will make your day a little bit better. I knew it, but then this 5-second moment of hesitation opens up. And I started thinking about what I needed to do instead of doing it. And that's where all of the emotion and all the anxiety and all the depression, it comes right into this 5-second moment of hesitation. I could feel myself reaching for the snooze button because it was a habit. I did it every single morning as avoidance and denial and numbing. But then I did something that I'd never done in my life. I started counting backwards, just like the space programs do when they launch a rocket. Works in any language, only works if you count backwards, does not work if you count up. Started counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just like a rocket launch. And boom, I stood up. It was this craziest thing. And that was that. The next morning I used it again. The next morning I used it again. By the 3rd morning, I thought this is very weird, but I was so desperate. I said, instead of getting resigned and cynical, why don't you just test this thing? Anytime you're in a moment, Mel, where you don't feel like doing something, or you're emotionally triggered, or procrastination's kicking in, or fear or anxiety, just count backwards. Let's see what happens. I'll be damned. Counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It made me pick up the phone and start looking for a job. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I put the booze over here and walked in that direction. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I settle my nervous system. Instead of screaming at my husband, Chris, I'm able to talk to him calmly. Using this tool, my whole life changed. Now, I never intended to tell anybody because it sounds stupid and I didn't know why it worked. No idea. And that all changed in 2011 when I was asked to give that TEDx talk. Now, by this point, I had gotten a job. Chris's restaurants were turning around because he was using the 5-second rule to make the courageous decisions that he had been avoiding. Everything was great. And somebody asked me to give a talk about finding a new job, about careers, about goals. That was the TEDx talk. I used the 5-second rule for 3 years to change my own life. I used it in secret. I didn't talk about it. It was a little self-coaching tool that was just incredible. It gives you instant motivation, instant courage, instant 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 push that you need to do the things that will change your life. So I get asked to give a TEDx talk about how you change your career. It was not about the 5-second rule. That was the first speech I'd ever given in my life. If you want to know what it looks like to have a 21-minute long panic attack, watch my TED Talk. If you look closely.
For people who are going to be looking for this TED Talk, is this the one called How to Stop Screwing Yourself Over?
Yes.
Amazing.
And I
22 million
literally,
views. Amazing.
yes, you can watch it. I literally have a bright red rash on my neck as I'm talking. All the anxiety coming. I forgot how to end the thing. I casually mentioned the 5-second rule at the end because I forgot what I was supposed to talk about. A year goes by, nothing changes in my life, and all of a sudden somebody reaches out on Facebook and asked me to speak, and they said that they had seen the speech in San Francisco. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, it's on Facebook. I'm like, it's on Facebook. They had put it on Facebook. It had like 1 million views. So I started being asked to speak about the 5-second rule, and it became this organic phenomenon. And I spoke for free about it for a couple years, and then I realized everybody at these events but me was getting paid, and I'm a moron. And about 4 years ago, or 5 years ago now, I started speaking professionally, and I became the most booked female speaker in the world.
What?
And
congratulations. That is amazing.
Thank you. 111 speeches in 2018. And then we focused on launching a talk show. But so the thing about the 5-second rule is it's not mine. It's for the world. And what I'm really excited and why I'm excited to come back to teaching it to you and how you use it with identifying triggers and with anchor thoughts is it's way more than a motivational tool. It is a weapon that you can use against programming in your mind that you want to upgrade. And here's how you're going to use it. Because it's being used by healthcare practitioners in psychiatric practices. It's being used in inpatient settings in psychiatric hospitals. It is being used by pediatricians to help kids with anxiety. It's being used by veterans organizations to help people with PTSD. It is a fundamental science-backed tool that is classified as a starting ritual in habit research. A starting ritual is something you can use to trick your own mind. See, all of the negative shit that you do, whether it's procrastinating or worrying or anxiety, it's all stored right here in this part of your brain. This part of your brain automates all your behavior. Any negative pattern that you feel like you don't want anymore in your life, we can interrupt that pattern and we can replace it with a new pattern. But first you got to learn to interrupt the pattern. And so what happens when you use the 5-second rule is counting backwards does something really powerful. When you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it requires focus when you first start using it, which is this puppy right here, the prefrontal cortex. When you count backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, the counting draws your focus to your prefrontal cortex and awakens it. So by the time you get to 1, the part of the brain that is responsible for courage, for learning new behavior, for strategic decision-making, and for being intentional and conscious has just woken up. The act of counting backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is an intentional act that interrupts a pattern of worrying or a pattern of negative self-talk or a pattern of anxiety that's automated. The act of counting is the first thing you choose to do to say, screw you, I'm not going to listen to that. By the time you get to 1, your mind is now primed to receive different information because it's ready to focus on something. So when you identify all the triggers that trigger you to feel anxious or worry or out of control right now, what you're now going to do is we're going to come up with a pattern that we want to replace. Because if your coping mechanism for anxiety in the morning is to lie in bed and to feel anxious as hell and to start getting depressed and then to sleep till noon, we want to replace that with getting up and getting out of bed and getting outside. And this change is going to happen in a 5-second window. So we identify the trigger. I feel depressed. I stay in bed. I oversleep. I don't get up. Then I wake up and feel horrible. Okay, that's the trigger, the morning, the alarm goes off. Great. We're going to use the 5-second rule. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're going to replace it with a different behavior that you've already planned. I'm getting up. It doesn't matter how I feel. I'm getting up. It might be that your coping mechanism is to hit the bong or to drink too much at night, because that's the only way you can get your mind to quiet down, right? Because we all are feeling something right now called moral fatigue. Have you heard this term before? Moral fatigue, really important to understand. If you feel like you're more exhausted than ever and you don't understand why because you're just sitting on your ass all day, let me tell you why you're exhausted right now, like exhausted in your bones, and why at the end of the day, you just want to numb out. So here's why. A month or 2 months ago, depending upon where you live in the world, going to the store and buying milk was a very automated proposition. You got to the store, walked in, you got your milk, you left. Now it requires complex processing. It requires your prefrontal cortex to fire up and go, okay, wait, do I have a mask? Do I have supplies? Is the store going to be open? Is there going to be a line? As you're driving along or riding your bike or walking, you see all these people with their masks on and it feels dystopian and weird and people are frowning and it feels scary. And then you go into the store and you're thinking, should I touch this? Should I not touch this? Should I pull out my money? Is there going to be milk? Did somebody touch the milk thing? Should I decontaminate? Does a virus live on plastic? Is it cold? Is it not cold? Should I say hi to this person? Am I standing too close to the cash register? Why can't I come up to the thing? When is this going to end? So by the time you get home, you've basically taken a standardized test. Your mind is like, oh, God. So if you're having a hard time focusing right now, it's because of what they call moral fatigue. Your mind is having to make big moral calls about every small aspect of life right now. It is gassing you. Your brain is so out of fuel. Your mind is so tired. So your butt may be in the same chair all day long. Your mind has just run 4 marathons. It's exhausted. So if you notice that you're making unhealthy choices or that you worry the most at night, that's a trigger. So the sun going down might be a trigger. It's a huge trigger for a lot of people. You want to know why? The reason why the sun going down is a huge trigger for a lot of people is that's when they're typically, if you grew up in a house with a lot of conflict, the fighting happened at night. So parents coming home from work puts you in a state, whether you realize it or not, of feeling on edge, that something's coming. And so it can be very hard for people that grew up in households with a lot of trauma and conflict to relax at night, which is why it's easy to reach for the booze or the weed or the whatever to zone out. And so instead, you could go to Mind Valley and do one of the yoga classes. You could make it a practice that you're going to watch a whole series of documentaries instead, that you're going to have a choice in place because you know the trigger's coming. Now, when it comes to worry, what you need to do is, again, this comes to one of the things that I've been doing is when I notice that my mind starts to go too far in the future, because lately this is what I've been worried about. And this is a very, this is a luxurious worry. But the thing that I've been thinking a lot about is, oh my God, what happens if our 21-year-old and our 19-year-old can't go back to college this fall? That is going to be a nightmare for me because they're going to be here in the house and I'm going to be, but I think about also, when am I going to get back on the speaking circuit? When am I going to be able to be out with people at events? When are we going to be able to get back to things? When I start to go there and I start to feel a level of spinning, I catch myself, because it's not going to serve me to worry. That's what everybody needs to understand. Your worrying is not helping you. It's hurting you. And so when I notice my own mind start to go to that place, I use the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's like going, giving your brain a little slap. I awaken this, and then at my desk, I'm not sitting at my desk because we went to my mother-in-law's place in Vermont, but I have a photo of Lake Michigan. I grew up in Muskegon, Michigan, and the state park there is on Lake Michigan, one of the Great Lakes here in the United States, and it's a beautiful freshwater lake with sand dunes and seagrass, just beautiful. And so I have a photo of it. And the reason why I have a photo of it is because it is a visual anchor that reminds me that better days are coming. It's a visual anchor that reminds me that when all of this is over and we flatten the curve together and I emerge back into public life, the first place I'm going to go is to see my folks. And I'm going to walk out onto that beach. And so everybody should think about what is the one thing you want to do when this is over that you can't do right now?
You know, I want to travel. I want to get on stage again. I want to speak again. I've had so many,
Okay.
just like you. I was supposed to speak at South by Southwest, and so many amazing events. All of that got dashed.
So pick one. I want everybody to pick one. So you pick.
Southwest. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so South by Southwest. So what I want you to do is I want you to find an image of a particular stage, because I know there's millions of them there, that you really see yourself, or the sea of people, or the big thing. But the vision that really represents that moment when you are out in public with that many people, able to share all of these amazing ideas and talk about this incredible community that you've built. And what you'll notice is that our minds are like boats. And if a boat isn't anchored, it will go with a current and drift away. And the current right now everywhere is extraordinarily negative. Nobody needs to turn on the news. You don't. I can tell you what's happening. People are dying. You're supposed to stay in your house, and we're working on finding a test and a vaccine. That's it.
Right.
Other than that, there's nothing else new going on. That's it. Believe me, when the stay-at-home orders are lifted, everybody will text you. You don't have to have the news on. But the current right now is super duper negative. And so it's easy to have your mind drift. So you need things to anchor you. A photo of the thing you're going to do, like your photo of South by Southwest and my photo of the shores of Lake Michigan, that is what they call an environmental trigger. That positive environmental trigger anchors your mind in the positive thought that this is going to pass. This is temporary. I'm going to get through this. And when I do, I'm going to go do this thing that I care about. That brings you back into being able to be in the moment and remind yourself, I'm okay. And when something happens that I need to worry about, that's when I'll worry about it. But right now I'm okay. And this is temporary. And that, by simply redirecting your mind all day long, you will train your brain, no joke, to start to spot the positive, optimistic things, even in this moment.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
How do we bring that list into this whole approach? So there was the list, there's
Yep.
the 5-second rule, and then there's that trigger, that positive trigger. How do we put all three of these tools together?
Excellent question. So number one, you're going to make a list of everything that triggers you. It could be the time of day. It could be a thought. It could be a certain news headline. It could be a certain thought, worried that maybe your mom or your dad is going to get this, or somebody that you love. Could be a thought. A lot of people I've noticed have a lot of thoughts right now about their own health. Mm-hmm. And so that's that. Whatever the trigger is that causes you to start to worry, write them all down. So now you know they're coming. Whenever one of them hits your brain, you're drifting down the negative current. Use the 5-second rule, count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to anchor yourself back down. Now, on the list of triggers that you have, what you're going to do is you're going to write down either an alternative thought. Hey, I'm not going to worry about that right now. Right now I'm safe. If I have to worry about, I'll worry about it when it happens. Saying it's not going to happen is not a great reframe, because most people don't believe that. They're worried it's going to happen. So you're going to write down your triggers.
So
yeah,
can I
give
do
me an
an
example.
example with you? Okay, so for example, for me, a worrying thought is I don't know when my kid's school is going to open again, right?
Okay.
And you're wondering the same thing. When are your kids going to be allowed to go back to college? So that would be one of the things that's worrying us. What would be the positive vision to that?
Okay. So the way that I've handled that, and again, you got to figure out what triggers you and what's going to ground you back into the present, is I don't need to know right now. At some point it's going to reopen and they'll go back then. What I've done is I've said in my mind, they're going back in January. And that means that since there's so much uncertainty, you can hack certainty two ways. One is creating a daily routine that gives you certainty right now, because you can count on your routine being predictable, and predictability gives you emotional safety. Two, you can create your own milestones based on what you know from the World Health Organization and based on your own critical thinking. Me personally, I don't think there's any coming out of this where I live until mid-July, maybe. And I don't think there's any way, given that my daughters go to big universities, that they will be ready this fall. So my mind goes, I'm not even thinking about it, because I think it's January 1.
Right.
And if it happens sooner, fantastic. Now, what I say to my kids is this. I say, look, your whole life changed dramatically in the last 6 weeks. And school doesn't reopen for another 3 or 4 months. The smartest people on the planet are working on this problem. And so if your life can change for the negative in 6 weeks, it could also change in the positive in the next 6 weeks. We just don't know. But just feel good knowing the smartest people in the world are all working on the same problem. And that's a really good thing.
Yeah, that's really true. And that gives me so much hope. Just before you, I was speaking to Stephen Kotler, the famous writer and futurist, and he said, never before in the history of science and humanity have we had this many of the world's talent working together to solve one singular problem.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Okay, now, so we have the list.
Yep.
We have that future vision, whether it's speaking on a particular stage or our kids going back to school. How do we apply the 5-second rule?
So when you feel yourself getting triggered, so think about when you get triggered, you typically feel it in your body first. Is it the pit in your stomach? Is it the heart racing? Is it the hair on end? What is it? Start to identify that, the thoughts that swirl. The second you feel that coming on, we're interrupting that response. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then drop in whatever thought you're replacing the worry with. My kids are going to go back in January. I don't need to worry about this.
Right. I like that. It's so simple, yet so effective.
Well, the reason why is because you're planning this ahead of time. You see what triggers you coming, and then you have a plan to replace it before it escalates and hijacks your ability to think. Because the more stressed out you get from worrying, cortisol floods your mind, makes it really, really difficult to engage your prefrontal cortex, makes it very difficult to focus on anything else. So we want to see it coming, use the 5-second rule to interrupt the automated nature of it and engage your prefrontal cortex before cortisol takes over. And because you have a go-to thought, you'll be able to switch it up immediately. Having the go-to thought is critical. Look, I heard from a COVID-19 ICU nurse who's using this same exact method all day long to keep herself from succumbing to terror and emotional overwhelm. And what triggers her, they have to wear like double and triple layers right now in the IC COVID units. And so it's super hot. and really suffocating because you're so bundled up and nobody can really see your face. And so when she walks into a patient's room and they shut the door behind her, she gets a surge. I don't know if I can handle this. She has an immediate trigger that I got to run. This is too much. I feel like I'm suffocating. What if I bring this back to my family? She's using 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 all day long to close the window on the terror, take a deep breath, and move forward toward the checklist. And that's how she's getting through her day. And it's working because she has a plan, knowing it's coming. See, most of us hate our anxiety and our worry and our fears so much that when we feel it coming up, we're like, oh shit, here it is. Oh, I don't want to feel it. And then we get all worked up because we're feeling anxious again, which only makes it worse. So this is a simple 3-step plan, list of triggers, 5-second rule, and a list of things you're going to think of instead. And now you're equipped to have the emotional resilience and the mental flexibility to switch gears so you can take control. When life suddenly changes and you feel like you have lost control and you start to feel stuck and powerless, how do you take control when you don't know where your life or the world or this moment is going? And here's the number one thing I want you to know. You don't need to know where this moment or where the world is going. You just need to know where you are going next. And one of the things that has happened, certainly in the pandemic, but it always happens when there's any kind of reckoning in your life, is that when you have something suddenly happen and your life is fundamentally changed, whether it's a death, or somebody says, I don't love you anymore, or you're fired, or you find yourself with a scary health diagnosis, there is a line in the sand. There is a life before that happened, and then a life after that moment happened. And that line in the sand, that reckoning that happens, and it happens for all of us, whether it's happening for you right now, or it has happened in the past, I'm telling you, there is a gift inside of this, even the darkest moments, because every single sudden change in your life that makes you feel like you've lost control and you no longer know where you're going, it's like hitting the giant pause button. And if you lean into the moment, there is a chance for tremendous wisdom and growth. There are things that you can do right now in order to take control of where you're going, of what you're thinking about. And you can start to take this moment of change and you can use it to be able to take and make an intentional pivot in the direction that is meant for you next. And one of the things I want to say about this moment is, look, if you're losing loved ones, you are terrified, this has made you lose your job, you feel like you're in that moment where everything, you're falling off a cliff, you're trying to pack a parachute, you're grieving. And so you got to give yourself space to grieve the losses that you're feeling. And when you get a little bit of distance from the grieving and the waves of grief and fear that you're feeling start to space out, they don't ever leave you, but over time, those waves of, holy cow, and I don't want this, and I can't handle this, and why is this happening to me? Time will start to lessen those waves. You will gather your feet underneath you again, and you will absolutely be stronger and be a better version of yourself based on this incredible challenge that you're facing. And I can say that even though you may be facing a tough time, because if you think about your life, you've faced extraordinary challenges and there hasn't been a single one that hasn't made you a better and stronger version of yourself. And this moment will be no different. So I want you to understand that when you get out of the cycle of grief, this is an enormous reckoning, an enormous opportunity for you to hit the pause button and for you to start to ask yourself the question, what do I want my life to look like? Because I think too many of us are sitting here going, I can't wait for my life to get back to normal. I can't wait for this to end. I can't wait to things to go back to normal. And in any moment of reckoning, what happens is there's actually parts of your old life that you don't want to go back to. And there is a tremendous amount that you're learning in this moment that you need to pause and take in and say, okay, based on what I've just learned, based on my old life, when I look ahead to my new life, what is it that I want my new life to look like? This next chapter, I can turn to a blank page. I can take all this wisdom, all this resilience, all this strength, and I can write something new. That's what I want you to know. You don't need to know where the world or where everything is headed. You just need to know where you're going to head next. When your life blows up and you find yourself in the ocean with like pieces of the boat all around, look for a fucking life preserver or a raft. Okay. So I want to applaud you for doing what needed to be done when the you know what hit the fan. That same instinct is what is going to make you successful. The second thing that I want to tell you is once you get a hold of that life raft, you want to grab something else that floats, right? And get yourself out of that water. And so I am glad to hear that you're looking for a job. Yeah. And what I would recommend is I would recommend not pretending about the situation that you're in. There is no shame in going to a job interview and at the end of it saying, and I'm asking you for this job. And the reason why I'm asking you for this job is not only because I am going to be incredible at it and you're never going to regret it, but I actually need it. I'm in a really tight jam. I had a life crisis happen. I never thought at the age of 55 I'd be in this situation, and I need the work and I want the work, which means I'm going to show up here every single day and I am going to work the heck out of this job. I've never wanted a job more than I want a job right now. And you should tell your friends that this is what you're going through and that you need help and that you need a recommendation or you need a place to stay. And you should not do what I did, which was hide what was going on because I was so ashamed. And, you know, I'm also going to tell you, it will take time. 5 years ago, I still had the liens on this house. 5 years ago, guys. And so it will take time for you to climb out of this, but you will climb out of this. When you're in a shitstorm and when the lights go out in your life and things feel really dark and really heavy, there has always been one thing that helps me get through those moments. And it's reminding myself that this moment, like every painful moment of my life, was temporary. It passed. And when you can keep telling yourself this moment it's going to pass and it's leading me somewhere, when you can trust in that, you create your own light in that dark tunnel. And it allows you to look up. And one of the things about learning something new, like how to make money online, is that it acts like a beacon for where you're freaking going.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the powerboat that gets you there right now.
I know.
Because you know what I mean? Because you need to find another freaking life jacket, which means you need to get a job. Which means you need to like just keep going on these interviews. And there's no need, like if you've gone on all these interviews and people are like, you're amazing, and then you don't get it, you think it's because you're too old or you're too desperate, they say you're a consultant. Right. There's no shame in writing back and saying, I'm not sure if you filled the position, but I didn't mention that I actually need a job.
Right.
My pride got in the way. And so if you haven't filled that position, or maybe you are looking for more people, I want to make sure you know I'm not looking to be a consultant. I've never wanted to find a great job more than ever than this moment. There's no shame in that. What's the worst they're going to say? Yeah, we filled the job.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I've been really even just struggling to even get interviews too. And it's just a funny thing, you know, and it's like, I did have like a really great.
What did you do before?
Well, I have I was sort of a rock star visual researcher with directors, like, back in the day. And I took an odyssey out of that when I had my kid and went to Europe, and I had a company doing that. And recently hooked up with my old team through B school, we're starting a Pinterest collective. So I'm reactivating this whole visual
Great.
research space.
Great. Let me tell you what you could do
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Project management.
I don't know, girl. I'm like the worst project manager.
Bullshit. Bullshit. You can't manage your own life. You can manage somebody else's project.
Maybe.
1,000%. 1,000%. Do not look for a job in what you used to do.
Okay.
Look for a job managing projects in any kind of company, because you just need structure and a place to go every day and a paycheck. That's like the rows on the boat rowing you ahead.
Yeah.
And you're scrappy enough, I can tell, that you'll get annoyed with that job. And then you'll start hustling even more than you are. And you'll giddy up in the other things. But you need the structure. You need to get out of the house. You need a simple paycheck. You need to do that routine for a couple months. I am telling you, it is the best job market in 4 years. I don't give a shit how old you are.
No, I love hearing that. And I get so frustrated by that because it's like
you're looking for the wrong kind of job. You're trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Yeah. I mean,
you have skills. Stop looking at industries. You have skills. You can manage things. The woman that I just hired, who's going to come on board as my executive assistant, like organize Mel, she was a graphic designer. She worked in a branding agency. She had a dog walking. She's never been an executive assistant. Why? Right. Because I just need somebody who can organize shit, who's an adult that I trust, who's not going to steal from me. That's what I need. And who can boss me around.
Right. Yeah, I do. I understand. I do think I do have the adult quality, and
of course,
I definitely I'm a pro. I mean, I honestly though, Mel, I would ruin your flights. I'm the worst. I'm not a project administrative.
Then don't take that kind of job. You're not hearing me. You have skills that you can market. Do not look for a visual organizer, needle in the haystack job. Forget that. Get your skills at the top of your resume. LinkedIn has an entire learning platform, and there is so much on there about marketing skills. That's what people are hiring right now. It's not about the industry.
Yeah, I do see that. I have 8 recruiters working for me that can't place me because it's I'm an email marketer. Everything is one skill kind of, parsed out. And
trust me, look for project management, account services, anything, honestly.
Okay.
That's just what you need. You need something. At this point, don't be picky. Just
I'm not picky.
a job.
I just feel I don't get any traction with it. It's weird. It's just a weird, I'm not.
Okay. So let me tell you something else. You ready?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you don't like the advice, which means it's exactly what you need to do.
I don't know. I'm open to doing anything, but I just wish I was good at that. I've worked with project managers and I value them.
Well, then don't be a project manager. You're missing the point.
Okay.
If you're working with recruiters, they're not going to place you in a job that's general.
Right.
80% of jobs are not even marketed. They are filled by referral.
Right.
You need to be talking to your friends. You need to be looking at the job boards on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And you need to be lowering your standards because you are in a lifeboat right now.
Right.
That's what you need to do.
Okay.
And as you lower your standards on the job front, and as you start rowing in a direction, because you now have a paycheck, you're able to get out of your ex-husband's apartment every day. I'm dead serious.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest about where you're at. And you have a rhythm to your week. That structure from that job is going to give you what you need to get going in a different direction.
Yeah.
You can't organize your thoughts because you're all over the place because you're in an emergency. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I want to tell you is you are capable of figuring this out. And you will get a job. And you will launch a new business. And you will make these things happen. And you will look back on this moment. And you will see exactly why this happened and how it helped you get somewhere awesome.
I believe that.
Excellent. Then
I
you're
totally
halfway
believe
there.
that. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thanks, Mel.
You're welcome. Being tough, because I want to see you pull yourself up out of this.
This is so weird. You know how thoughts are expand?
Yeah.
All I do is think about you. You're my favorite on there. Her personality, you're the go-getter. Oh my gosh. It's amazing. I've been looking at you. I've been doing research on all that stuff, and here you are. It's so crazy.
Well, you know why I think that happens? I think that there's something that you're thinking about doing, and I'm a physical sign that it's time to cut off with the self-doubt and the fear and all that stuff. And I'm actually sitting at this table. So what is it?
Well, I have a real estate license. I haven't even been able to do it because I'm trying to make money, but I want to write a book. I want to write a book so bad. And
so what's the book about?
I want it to be a great book because I'm a romance person, but I'm thinking children, like Evie the Flying Dragon,
It can be anything you want. So do you want me to give you advice?
Sure, thank you. I can't believe I'm sitting at the table with you. I didn't want to bother you. I thought I saw you on the phone. It's just crazy.
Well,
that's nuts.
I would imagine that since you follow me, you know that I would be mad at you if you didn't say hello.
Yeah, I don't like every day, but for the past month, like at least all on the weekends, every weekend, you're the one I go to. I love you. I'm sorry.
That's so great. I love you too.
I think it's amazing. It's awesome that you're here.
So what I'm going to tell you is that you need to start acting like a published author. And let me tell you what that means. Every single morning, I want you to sit down and open up a notebook, and I want you to write for just 5 minutes. That's it. And I want you to write for 100 days in a row. And I want it to be just the shittiest blop that comes out, right? Because I want you to get all of the garbage out, right? I'll wait till she goes. So if writers write, the secret to changing yourself and to changing your life is to simply take action every day that's consistent with where you're going, not where you are.
What if somebody has so many things though that they're trying to do? Like I have probably 3 different jobs.
Okay.
So how do you focus on? So just focus on the book if that's the thing.
Here's why I'm telling you to just write for 10 minutes every day. It will help you build the muscle of consistency. It will help you by making it really small, just 10 minutes, to act like the person you want to become. That is a skill. So if you can practice that for 100 days, just 5 minutes a day, opening up your notebook, you got a notebook right over there. Yep. See the notebook right there? You're just going to write for 5 minutes. Even if it's garbage, even if you some days open up the thing and you can't think of a thing. Right? I can't think of anything to say. This is stupid. I hate that I committed to this to Mel Robbins. I want you to do that every day. And I also, if you want to supersize it, take a photo and post it on your story and tag me. Mel, it's day 23. Photo of you with your little notebook, okay?
Wow, okay.
If you push yourself every day to write for just 5 minutes, that's it. And you show up every day consistently. And even if you miss a day, you show up again the next day. You are building a new muscle. And that muscle is the muscle of simple discipline. And if you can do that with simply writing for 5 minutes, you can then add something about real estate. Meaning, after you've practiced for 100 days, if you want to sell real estate, but you're not taking the actions to do it, once you're starting to develop this muscle and you see yourself going, oh, I can make a promise. I can commit 5 minutes a day. once you start to feel that momentum, you can add, I'm going to also add one thing a day about real estate.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
See, your life goes off the rails by all those little moments you hesitate, all those little moments you overthink, all those little moments that you feel overwhelmed. Because when you start to think or feel all those negative emotions, it triggers you to take no action.
Right.
So your life goes in the wrong direction by thinking too much. And it's all those little moments where you stop and think that are kind of piling up. You turn your life in a new direction by focusing on small micro actions, just for 5 minutes a day. That's it, just small little micro actions. It's not going to feel like anything, but it's going to start to build. And you're going to start to feel a sense of momentum, and you're also going to start to feel a sense of pride in yourself because you are doing something you said you would do. And that is the beginning of all change, watching yourself show up for yourself. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That is so sweet. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. I'm sorry.
And don't doubt this. You said a book. This doesn't mean you have to write a book.
Right.
The book is a vehicle to practice behavior change.
Were you ever shy? You were never shy, were you?
Well, I was always riddled with anxiety.
Yeah.
And I think that me being extroverted or me...
Oh, there. I remember now. Anxious, you're excited, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's right.
Oh, Roberto better get on that flight, you know what I'm saying? Roberto, you're interrupting our conversation right now. But I love her commitment to getting him on that plane. I think when I was younger, I was outgoing or loud, but terrified inside. And it just like some folks pull back because they're nervous or insecure. There are some people like me who are a little bit louder and go first because I felt like if I went first or I spoke up first, I'd be in control.
Okay.
Versus sitting back, terrified that, you know, I'd get called on or
Then
I
you
would
think about it more. Wow, that is so true.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I haven't lost anybody that I love. So I would not say what I'm about to say if somebody that I loved had died in this pandemic. But I have found the great pause that the last 2 months have forced me to take to be the greatest gift that I have received in the last decade. My kids have been home. I have been off the road. I have been forced to slow down. I have been reminded of what actually matters: your health, your family, your friends, what you're doing to take care of your mind and your body and your spirit, and making sure that you do something with the time that you have that you really, really enjoy. And the other thing that it's really made me stop and think about is making sure that I'm having fun, that my whole life isn't just work. And it's made me really start to think about the fact that I don't want to go back to the life that I was living before the pandemic hit. How many of you feel that way? That this has been a gigantic mental perspective switch reset button that has, boom, hit you really hard. I want to know in the comments, what is it that you, with this new perspective that the pandemic has given you, what is it that you want to change in your life coming out of this? I want to start seeing, I see people saying this has been a wake-up call. I see people saying, yes, this has been a huge shift in my perspective. I see Brianna saying, I want to travel less for work. What do you want? Kelly says she's had a mental switch. Kelly, what has this pandemic given you in terms of the gift? Heather's saying, I want to ask myself, what do I really want to do? Kim says, I don't want to go back to the rat race. Brock says, I want to start the year excited. about it. I see somebody saying, Larissa says a new business. Megan says, I want more boundaries. Tara says, I want to have more fun. What is it that you want to change, given the gift that this pandemic has given you in terms of shifting your perspective? Dinky says, value my friends and family. Jilla says, take care of my mental health. Spend more time with family. What do you want to change, everybody? Seriously, what do you want to change about your life? Is it a relationship? Is it that you have had the time to take care of yourself in small ways, and that's giving you greater control in your life? Do you want to change your job coming out of this? Do you want to launch a business coming out of this? Do you want to change your timeline for achieving your goals? Is there some project that you want to take on? Because what you're going to hear me say over and over again is that the single most important project you could ever work on is yourself. And the greatest gift that any challenge will ever give you is a perspective shift and the realization that you can face hard things, that you can survive hard things, and that in learning more deeply about yourself and about what you value through the challenges in life, you are going to be handed a moment where you can make a decision. You hear me say all the time, you're one decision away from a different life. Changing your life does not take motivation. Motivation is garbage. Changing your life takes discipline. The discipline to make a decision to change. You see, you need three things if you want to come out of this pandemic and truly change your life for the better. So many of you do not want to go back to the life that you were living. You see something greater for you. And what you're going to need in order to make that shift is you need clarity. You need the clarity to write the change down. And I want you to start right now. What in the comments? Let's get really clear. Terry wants to come out of this a healthier and better person. What is the clarity? Tell me the change that you want to make coming out of this. You got to have the clarity to write it down. That's number one. The second thing that you got to have in order to make a change happen is you've got to learn the skill of confidence, which is the ability to try something when you don't feel ready. You may not know how to do this change. I see advocate for myself. I see more physical movement. I see I want to change my job. I want to start a business. I want to earn more money. I want to travel less. I want my work to have meaning. I want to get out of an abusive relationship. I want to help people in need. I want to make sure that I continue to keep the promises that I've been keeping, getting up on time, working out every day, working on my relationship. This is fantastic because you're having a moment of clarity. And when you start to write it down, you are starting to develop the confidence and the knowing that you deserve to have this change happen. And then finally, what do you need in order to really change your life? Because it's not motivation, everybody, it's discipline. Discipline to make small promises, keep small promises, discipline to take small actions when you feel afraid, the discipline to find the courage to push yourself forward when you don't know how. That's how you change your life. Just those three things: clarity, confidence, courage. That's all you need. And that's why you got me in your life, because I'm here to push you. I'm here to encourage you. And I love seeing what you want to change. That, oh, I see you need help building confidence. No problem. I got you covered. Because confidence isn't something that you feel. Confidence is a skill. Confidence is the willingness to try, because it's through the act of trying, through the act of simply writing down what's the change that you want to make right there in the comments. just writing it down and trying out writing what that feels like, that's going to show you that you have the ability to start to express the things that you want. And that's the first step, to claim these things that you think about. So for those of you, more than 100 of you, who have written to me in the last week and who have said, I've had a huge perspective shift thanks to this pandemic. And there are some major changes I want to make in my life. I want to start a women's group. I want to end this relationship that I'm in. I want to stop bashing myself all the time. I want to launch that business I've been talking about. All of the things that you've put on hold. Now is the time to change. So many of you asked me, is it the right time to change your job after a pandemic like this? Absolutely. Because if you don't hear the clarity that's inside you, if you don't quiet the noise and tune in to hear, if your instincts, if your wisdom, if your knowing, if inside of you, you hear yourself saying, I got to get a new job. I got to get out of this relationship. I don't want to live where I live anymore. I want to be near the water. I want to be in the mountains. I want to be out of the city. You have to tune into that stuff. And then it's about confidence and courage to take action. That's it. One more. Yes. What's your name?
Delaney.
Hi, Delaney.
Hi. I wanted to start off by saying I listened to your segment with Alex, to those feeling lost in your 20s.
Oh, yeah, she's talking about call her daddy.
You can't call me out like that at work.
Yes, you can. Girl, that is the #1 female-hosted podcast in the world.
Yeah. But I wanted to say, you said earlier in terms of the 5-second rule, the easiest part is knowing what you need to do. I feel like I've been a little overwhelmed lately. What would you say, or the biggest piece of advice when you don't know what you need to do before you say 5 seconds?
Are you talking about work, or are you talking about life in general, or?
I think all of the above, right?
Okay, great question. How many can relate to this? Excellent. Okay, so when it comes to work, a really great habit to get into, especially as y'all are making this big turn, is try to have a quick alignment meeting with the person you report to every Monday. And just go over what's on your plate and recheck in about what are the strategic objectives for this week so that you're aligned with what the person who you're reporting to. Because I'll give everybody the super simple secret other than visibility for being a rock star at work. Make your boss's life easier. Literally, you make the person that you report to's life easier because you're getting stuff done and you're solving problems. And here's the most important thing, you're communicating about what's getting done. You literally are a superstar because your boss is just as overwhelmed as you are. And so if you just touch base, even if you can't get a meeting and you send the 17 things on your plate and you say, I'm a little overwhelmed, I just want to make sure that I know what the priority is this week. Because it is changing all the time because they're responding as much as you are. That's #1. #2, at the end of the week on Fridays, send a short email saying this got done, this got done, this got done, this got done, this got done. And here are the things I'm going to need your help with on Monday. You keep somebody in the loop like that, they will help you create rails that keep you very focused and feeling more sure about what you're working on, okay? So that's #1, ask for help. Do not try to figure that out on your own. #2, when it comes to feeling lost in life and overwhelmed in life, always go back to your morning routine. Always go back to your morning routine. And there are 2 rules that I have for my morning routine. Everybody hates them. Nobody follows them. It changes your life. #1, do not sleep with your phone. Do not sleep with your phone. And the reason why I say do not sleep with your phone is because we're all addicted to it. If you were addicted to cocaine or alcohol, you wouldn't put it on your bedside table. But, you literally go to bed, and then before you're even out of bed, you literally doing this. And you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And like, if you're laying in bed reading work emails or looking at Facebook, you literally just let your boss, sorry Tia, and all of your friends on Facebook walk in your bedroom. And more importantly, you let the world hijack your mind. So before you're even vertical, you are stressed out, overwhelmed. That one change, which you're not going to want to do, will solve the problem of overwhelm. And here's what I do. I plug my phone into the bathroom every night because it solves two problems. Number one, when that alarm goes off, now I'm really screwed because it's not next to me. So I have to get out of bed. Number two, the phone's not there. So as I wake up and I walk to the bathroom, I'm so mad at myself. But by the time I get to the bathroom, I'm now awake enough that I can turn the alarm off and flip the phone over. I don't pick it up. I don't do it. Even if I post things in the morning, I do that after I take 30 minutes for myself. What do I do in those 30 minutes? Well, I do all the stuff that you know that makes you feel better. I literally journal for a second. I move my body. This is a life changer. If you literally just work out for 10 minutes in the morning, it can be enough. I eat something healthy. I have a cup of coffee. I set my intention for the day. I think about the one thing I want to make progress on. And only then do I then pick up that phone. Then I let the world in. And by getting myself right with myself and setting myself up and giving myself 30 lousy freaking minutes to start the day, to clear my head, to think about what I want out of the day, to take care of myself just a little bit, now I'm in a better place. Now I'm able to do it. And then there's one more exercise. It's kind of a spin on the person you want to be. So my daughter's 23 and had a really rough time with COVID. The last 2 years of her college imploded because of COVID. And she left college basically depressed, really unhealthy, drinking way too much, and she had a meltdown. And so she said, I sat down with her and my husband, and we just were talking with her, and I said, here's what I want you to do. If you ever feel overwhelmed or lost, I want you to draw a line down the center of a paper, and I want you to think back, when was a moment in my life where I felt happy, and I felt like I was happy about where my life was headed? And so my daughter said, senior year in high school. And I said, great, what were you doing then? What was life like then? She's like, well, I was getting up early, I was going to school, I saw my friends every day, I was playing lacrosse, so I exercised 6 days a week, I was only drinking 2 nights a week, I had something to look forward to. I'm like, great, now let's write down what your life looks like right now. Oh, I'm sleeping till noon, my friends have all left and started their lives, I drink every day, I'm not exercising. I'm like, great, compare the lists. You are wired for happiness. You're wired for clarity. You are wired for success. It's why you miss it when you don't have it. You can only miss something you know. The answers are in there. And so like we've said with a lot of the things, even though it's overwhelming, there are ways, simple ways that you can solve this. Go to your boss, start getting aligned, get direction, and then do what they tell you to do. That'll give you the structure right there. Ask for help always. Second thing is, go inside and take a look at what your habits looked like and your days looked like when you felt a little bit more in control, when you felt like yourself, and then compare with what you're doing now. Come back to your morning routine, and you will set yourself up to have a day that feels like you're in control, and that'll change everything. That was a great question. Hi, you did it.
Yes.
You did it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My friend group, we're big fans.
Awesome.
Especially, we're transitioning just out of college right now. So, yeah, your podcast with Alex was great timing for me.
What did you get out of that conversation that I had with Alex?
I got, especially the relationship one. I don't know how you said it, but kind of, I need to fix who I am first, because like a relationship's kind of like a mirror of what you're feeling in a way.
Even worse, a relationship amplifies what you're feeling.
Yeah.
So if you go after that person and you're feeling insecure, and so you're chasing that person that's the hot guy, and if he only or she or da-da-da-da-da, even if the person ends up being with you, you're actually going to feel insecure because you didn't enter the relationship feeling good about yourself. So you're 1,000% right. Work on yourself first, because then you bring that to every relationship, and then the relationship is just additive to you versus amplifying the crap that you're trying to run from. And I only know that after really screwing things up in my 20s and 30s. Like literally disaster. I would attach myself to people in order to prove that I was okay.
Yeah.
And it just made me feel worse about myself because I needed them to feel okay. So when the relationship broke up, I crumbled.
Yeah.
I'm struggling with the fact that I feel like I should be getting a lot done. I'm blessed with all this time now, and I'm not getting shit done. I'm not.
Why do you think you should be getting stuff done?
Well, because part of my, when I was really busy all the time, which has been, gosh, most of the last 30 years where I've been working with the same company and building up to an executive position, I always wanted more time. And I was actually have been working on starting my own side business. And time was a constraint. So I'd be like doing training on my commute, on the back, listening to things, fitting in it wherever I can. And all of a sudden I have all this time and I'm using the time to stress and procrastinate. And of course I have kids. I've adopted my 2 little granddaughters. They're, one turned 5 today and the other one's 6. And so they're off of school. And, so, and that's...
First of all, let me stop you there. Happy birthday to your granddaughter. And you said that you had a full-time job. Are you working right now?
No, I was furloughed on March 20th.
Okay.
And part of the stress is it's the way that I was furloughed. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I know there is anyway, but it wasn't sort of after the fact. It makes me feel like they don't want me back. And my job was great. I was like the superstar person there for 28 years. And about 2 years ago, they suddenly changed my position and moved me into something I didn't want to do, but it was lateral, but I kind of had no choice.
Yeah.
And it was around the same time that I was starting the process of adopting my grandkids. And I don't know for sure that that's what it is, but I know that that's when I had the schedule where I had more limited hours to work, down to like 45 or 48 instead of, 55 to 60.
So they furloughed you and it feels more like a firing.
Right, because I had to turn in my keys. They shut off my email the next day. Then they called and asked for my laptop. And I said, I'm not using it, but sure, you can have it. But what's the rush? They're like, oh, we're just calling them all in. So then they had somebody come pick it up. This was 5 days after I was furloughed or so. And they cleared out the rest of my office. I took 2 boxes with me when I left because they asked us to clear everything out. And I've been there for, forever. So I had a big office full of stuff. Well, then I had 5 more boxes of stuff. They cleared every desk drawer, everything off the walls. It doesn't
It's not easy.
No. And I have, it's 30 years of my life.
So you're in the same camp as anybody that lost something and didn't expect to lose it, whether it was the college graduation or the internship this summer or a 30-year job.
Yeah.
And so you've got, on one hand, the disruption, how discombobulating and surprising it is, how confusing it is. And we could sit here all day and make up stories about, well, they're just following protocol because gosh knows how long this is going to last. And they're probably
Right.
just being fiscally responsible. And it'd be a lot harder to get that laptop back 6 months from now if they have to close the whole thing down than to just do it all with everybody right now.
Yep.
Or it could be, hey, let's use this as a chance to get rid of people that we were wanting to get rid of anyway. I don't
Right.
have a clue. You don't have a clue. It is a total waste of time to sit and try to figure out what do we think is happening. And so what I want you to do instead is to focus on what you want to have happen now.
Okay.
Because let's assume you're not going back.
Right.
You are now the primary caregiver to a 6 and a 5-year-old. You have a side business and you cannot seem to be able to focus. And the reason why you can't focus is a combination of all of the disruption that happened in your life and the stress it creates, and add to it the pandemic and all the stress that that creates. Add to that any of the financial issues that you may be thinking about and all the stress that that creates. And when you feel stressed in your body, Heidi, I want you to understand that what happens is it rises the level of cortisol in your body. And when cortisol hits this part of your brain, it impacts your ability to focus. So there's a direct connection between an increase in stress and anxiety and worry and a decrease in your ability to direct your focus.
Okay.
And so the other thing that makes this really difficult, and I can see you getting emotional. What's coming up for you?
It's just a huge part of my identity has been my career.
Yeah. And you know what else has been a huge part of your life? Because this is something that I am experiencing, is I was what you call an over functioner. Very busy, constantly on the move.
Yes.
And right? And you are probably a bit of an extrovert too.
Yeah.
And so the nature of what we're going through has also highlighted the fact that you stayed busy as a way to not have to deal with the things that stress you out. And when somebody like you or me gets forced to slow down, all this stuff comes up that we don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
And the more that you resist all of these feelings, the longer you're going to stay spinning, and the longer that you're going to not be able to focus. And what you need, given that the way that your life used to be just got ripped from you, is you need to come up with a plan for what you're going to do next.
Right.
So are you going to look for a job? Are you going to do something else and invest in this side hustle? What are you going to do?
Okay, well, I might say in terms of if I don't get called back to work by June, I thought it would be smart of me to make a move to the mainland. Because the way things were going last year with my job, and I've always been this star performer and everything, just the star performer, part of the team, really close with everybody at work. And last year, for the first time, I had a poor review. I felt like things that were said were not even.
Okay, so can I just slow you down?
Yeah.
Because what I just heard you say is that even going back a year, you got your first poor review, and you can feel that things are going like this.
Yeah.
And that is a piece of data that's very important. And you said you were going to wait until June to see if they bring you back. And if they don't bring you back, then you're going to make a move to the mainland.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to unpack for you.
Okay.
I am working on a book on decision making. And I want to road test an idea with you.
Okay.
Because when I hear you say that things were going downhill, but you're going to wait until they decide, what I hear is somebody giving all the power to somebody else.
Okay.
And I believe that there are only two kinds of decisions that we make. We make what I call a noisy decision, or we make a quiet decision. And I want to teach you right now how to make a quiet decision.
Okay.
A noisy decision is the type of decisions that most of us make all the time. They are driven by the noise of what's going on around us, driven by the noise of fear, driven by the noise of anxiety, driven by the noise of pleasing other people, driven by the noise of being a good girl, driven by the noise of your self-doubt, driven by the noise of all the things that you do and have always done in the way that you've always done them. And then there's the quiet decision. And a quiet decision is one where you take a deep breath and you tune out all the fear and all the shit that everybody else is saying. And you go in here and you ask yourself, what do I want? And so let's do that right now.
Okay.
If you remove fear from the equation and you remove all of the noise and the doubt and overwhelm and everything you're feeling, don't worry about the how, don't worry about the when of whatever. I want you to just go right in here and get very quiet. Quiet enough so that you can hear your own voice for a second. What do you want?
This is what I was thinking about late last year when I started doing Best Decade Ever. I started, thinking about that, and so I wanted to come up with an e-commerce business, and I've been studying towards that because especially at my age. I'm 55 and I have 2 little kids that I need to support and, all the way through that. I love that they keep me, I don't know what I can do about that right now. But, so I want to have flexibility and time freedom. And I did think about this last one. I actually bought a property in my hometown that I grew up in. I took out a loan for the down payment out of my retirement account. And
So can I ask you a question? Because here's what I hear. I hear you saying you want to pursue this side business and that you want to move.
Yes, it's hard to be quiet, but I think it's the best thing.
Okay, so listen. So when you tune out the noise and the fear, what do you want? Say it to me specifically without explaining why.
I want to move, and I want to move and start a new life, start over again.
Terrific. Okay, there you go. There's your decision.
Yeah.
So fuck what this company does.
Yeah.
You want to move.
Yeah.
And that is a quiet decision. It's a decision that chooses you. It's a decision that comes from courage. It's a decision that is purposeful. And so now what we do is move into the execution part of that decision. We have decided you're moving.
Okay.
So when are you moving?
I think August, September later.
I want you to pick a date.
Okay. I'll just say August 31st.
Terrific. August 31st, you're moving.
Okay.
You've just made a quiet decision. Now it's your job to figure out how to get it done and what steps to take when.
Okay.
What does it feel like right now to know that you've made a decision?
In a way, it feels calm. In another way, like, I started going, okay, I have to do this, that's coming up for me, but it's also like, calm. I've been leaning towards this decision, but I have people saying, well, you're not going to give up your job.
That's the noise.
Yeah.
So other people are making a decision not to do it for you. That's why you got to tune out the noise and tune into what you're quietly telling yourself.
Yeah.
And so you have just made a decision. You're going to move. And all I invite you to do for the next 5 days, you don't have to do anything. You've already, I'm sure, applied for unemployment. I want you to just sit with this decision. I want you to start to get excited about the decision. And starting this weekend, you can start making a plan to make the decision happen. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I always say you're one decision away from a different life. And that's because when you're swirling in uncertainty and self-doubt and confusion, one decision will cut through all of that noise that's keeping you stuck, and it will give you clarity, purpose, and confidence. And that's what you just did today. Good job, Heidi.
Thank you. Thank you, Mel.
You're welcome.
This is how you manifest properly, by the way. Right here. You have to visualize in your mind writing the check and feeling the pain in your legs of uncertainty. You have to visualize in your mind sitting in that plane seat, flying to a conference, feeling the pit in your stomach, being worried about whether or not anyone's going to take you seriously because there's all these big podcasters there. You need to feel your chest contract and squeeze in as you walk up to somebody that you deeply admire and you start a conversation, or you walk up to an event organizer and say, I'd like to apply to be on a panel next year. How do I do that? And your chest gets really tight because you feel like you don't belong there because you don't have the numbers yet, or whatever your stupid story is. When you picture that in your mind and you feel the negative sensation in your body, you are doing resistance training. This is how you align your mind, body, and spirit to not resist the hard stuff. Here's a cool fact about your brain. Your brain doesn't know the difference between you actually spending the money, buying the plane ticket, getting on the plane and flying to that event, or you imagining it in your mind. And when you run through the hard things that you're avoiding in your mind and you allow yourself to feel the negative sensation in your body, you are training and mentally rehearsing the exact same way Olympic athletes do with the 9 sports psychologists that the U.S. Olympic team has to help our athletes prepare. You are mentally rehearsing before the actual event so that your mind and your body are trained to anticipate and push right on through all the stuff that's scary because you've already rehearsed it. That's how you use manifesting to help you do the work to get what you want.
Wow. I'm so grateful that we kind of brought that up and that you helped walk me through this.
What did you get out of that?
Well, I became aware of not only what I need to do, but like what's the fear that's attached to it.
What is the fear?
Well, the fear is always going to be uncertainty or scarcity, because I think the one thing that's been beneficial to me in my life is that I've always had my back against the wall from being somebody who was a convicted felon in jail, not growing up with a ton of money, that sort of thing, where I've always been forced to just hustle, work, where I'm used to this kind of situation. But on the flip side, the negative is I'm so used to being stressed because I grew up in a stressful environment. I put myself in a stressful environment from selling drugs and doing drugs for a majority of my life when I was younger, so that a lot of times now I've had to become aware of when I'm creating more stress around something that's a good thing instead of something that I would have seen back in the day as something that was bad or whatever.
Can I unpack that?
Sure.
So you just said that you realize that you're used to having your back up against the wall. That having been a kid that grew up in a very chaotic household, who then turned to dealing drugs, who then got arrested and was convicted as a felon and served time behind bars, all of which I'm very familiar with because I used to be a public defender in Manhattan. So I have not served time, but I have represented people accused of crimes and who have committed crimes and who have served time for a large part of my career. And one of the things that I want to point out is that you were attracted to the chaos of selling drugs because it's all you knew as a kid in your home and it felt familiar. And this is why it can be really challenging to break old patterns. And that's because patterns are familiar. And if they're familiar, they just repeat automatically without you even realizing it. And so here you are now. How many years have you been out of jail?
Gosh, so December 26th just marked 13 years.
So 13 years. On December 26th, it was 13 years since you were released from federal prison.
Or,
amazing.
Or county jail, yeah. But
okay, well, county jail.
Yeah.
It's still a felony conviction.
Yep.
13 years, you're behind bars. You have turned your entire life around, but there is one pattern that still runs your life. And the pattern that runs your life is chaos. And if you don't identify that chaos and friction and feeling on edge is what you're so familiar with, if you don't identify that now and recognize all the places in your business where you are creating chaos, creating friction, and putting yourself on edge, that pattern will keep you from living into your full potential. And so here's what I would do. I would make a list of every aspect of your daily life or business that creates chaos, that causes friction internally, or leaves you feeling on edge. And then I would do the work this year to put systems, people, process in place so that you create new patterns. I can relate to this so profoundly, not because I've served time behind bars, but because, like so many people, having stored trauma from being molested as a kid, when I was 9 years old, in my nervous system, I have lived my whole life from the age of 9 till about 46 when I first started understanding that this was stored trauma and understanding that my anxiety was largely due to the fact that when that happened to me at the age of 9, my nervous system went from calm and cool and resting to on edge, stressed out, fight or flight. And it probably never flipped off of that. My dominant pattern, Doug, is being busy and being on the run and being on the move, because if I can be 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody else, I'm going to be safe. And so the thing that doesn't work in my life is that my whole business, up until very recently, was organized around a pattern that's Mel's running to catch a plane. Mel's running to do this. Mel's on the move. And I hated how it felt, but I had no idea how to stop being so busy and stop being on the run, because I equated being on the run with safety and with control. And it's the opposite. You see, these patterns that we develop when we're a kid made us feel safe when we were a kid because they were familiar. But now that they're an adult, they're screwing up our lives. And so I have gone through the same exercise very recently. What are all the things in my business and that I'm doing in my day-to-day life that I hate? What are the things that cause friction? Where are there, where is this behavior making me miserable? And now I am going to work with removing all the friction, removing all the busyness. And I'm going to tell you first of all, what are you getting out of me sharing this?
Well, I'm very thankful because my audience is going to totally relate to this. And that's kind of why I shared what I shared, because there's so many people that struggle with this very thing. And I was very fortunate that I was in a therapist's office probably, I don't remember, 6 or 7 years ago. And I was stressed and I had nothing to be stressed about. I was making good money. I was writing books, and I had just written my first book, and my therapist was like, what was your childhood like? I was like, my parents got divorced. And I just started explaining what happened. She's like, you grew up in chaos. So like you said, your nervous system is going to seek out more chaos. And then it began to make sense, because she was like, you have a certain level of homeostasis that your body is used to, and your body is always going to revert back to that. You have to create a new normal. And I was fortunate that I'm still aware of it. And I think just through, I'm aware of it, and I still make mistakes based on it just because I'm still working through a lot of that. But there's a lot of people that, as you're saying that, they never figure it out because they're like, they just accept the fact they're always going to be stressed.
You don't have to be. Like, I think the place, if you want to heal, if you want to be happier, the place to really focus all your work on is regulating your nervous system. And there's lots of ways you can do it. You can do it through cold exposure therapy, by climbing into an ice bath and learning how to breathe yourself through the discomfort for 30 seconds to a minute. You can do it through EMDR. You can do it through guided psychedelic therapies, with a licensed therapist. But you're not going to talk yourself out of a nervous system response. You can also put your hands on your heart. This is something I write about in the High Five Habit, and press on your vagus nerve and say, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved, which will bring you back into your body, and it'll flip the switch between your fight or flight sympathetic nervous system back into the parasympathetic nervous system. And so there are things you can do, but understand that these patterns get triggered at an emotional nervous system level before your brain catches up. And so the reason why, for example, when I asked you, hey, visualize yourself writing a check that's scary, and you said, I feel that in my legs, that's your nervous system. That's where your stored tension, trauma, and stress activates. It can be different for everybody. And so, back to the advice I was giving you, you have to write down all the areas where you are unknowingly creating chaos. And I remember this person said something to me when I first got involved in the speaking business and my career started to take off. And he said, Mel, you better say yes to every speech you can get, because speakers on the corporate circuit get hot and then they disappear. And this is a fad. And that triggered that, like, I got to go, 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 go. And so for 5 years, I said yes to absolutely everything I possibly could, because my husband and I were in a horrendous financial situation and we desperately needed the money. And I ran myself into the ground, not because I was being intentional, but because this pattern of being busy kicked into full gear, but it was driven by fear. It was driven by fear. And I believe that as much work as you have done on yourself, turning your whole life around and now serving so many people and making a huge difference in building this business, if you dig deep, what drives the fear of spending the money and investing yourself is a deeper fear.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And it's forcing me, or just thinking about it now, it's forcing me to just to reinforce that the work never stops. Like, there's always going to be something that comes up. And I think a lot of people think of healing as they climb this mountain, they put a stake in the ground, they're like, yep, that's it, I'm done. And it's not what happens. And I think that's why a lot of people, they stay stuck and they develop this fixed mindset, because they don't have the humility to look in the mirror and say, like, I need to improve this. This area of my life needs some healing. I need to do some work. And we touched on obviously some things that I need to work on personally, and both personally and professionally. But I guess my question back to you is, so the High Five Habit's been out now for several months. We just got through the holidays. What's been like something recently since the book came out where you've had to give yourself a high five and pick yourself back up after you were in a negative self-talk loop, you were feeling low about yourself? Was there something? And if so, what was it?
It's basically every day.
Yeah.
You just said you've written the High Five Habit. It's a wildly successful book. Is there a moment that you have to pick yourself back up? The reason why I start every day with a high five in the mirror as part of my morning routine, and I do it like it's now, I've repeated it so many times, I don't even think about it, because it's just like brushing my teeth. I brush my teeth. I wouldn't even think about starting my day without brushing my teeth. I wouldn't think about starting my day without high-fiving myself in the mirror and experiencing the benefit neurologically and chemically to what it does. I need one every day. Life is fucking hard. I mean, just this week, I have one daughter who has started a new job after graduating from college, having had 2 years of her college experience imploded. And she is starting remote at a large tech company. She is profoundly capable, and she's a nervous wreck. And that makes me feel sad and distracted and upset for her. We have another daughter who is a junior in college and which basically means she's had 6 months of a traditional college experience, who just got word that school is now pushed back a week. It's starting remote, that Rush is online, just things that seem trivial, but it's her whole world. And so her trying to grapple with how to make sense of the ever-changing world that we live in. I was supposed to fly down and see my parents who are on the panhandle of Florida this weekend. And given the surge that we're in the middle of, I think I need to push this thing off because there's connections involved and I don't want to spend the weekend in the airport. And it's a lot of money to fly down there right now. And not that I don't have it, but I'm kind of feeling like, God, I don't want to disappoint my mom, but I really don't want to spend 2 days in an airport. And what do I do? And so it's like, Mel, come on, make the phone call. Every single day, life is going to throw situations, emotions, distractions, stuff at you that you can't control. And the whole game is how you support yourself in responding to it. And so I have developed the skill of being so in tune with my nervous system. And when I'm kind of in my body and feeling comfortable in my own skin, and when I am triggered and I go on edge. And the second I feel myself go on edge, I have a skill of putting myself in pause, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and checking in with myself and getting aware of what is going on. And let's take the example of why, the high five helped this morning of feeling on edge about calling my parents, who we haven't seen since end of September, and saying, I think we should push this off 3 weeks. It's my mother's birthday. I deeply miss them. I want to see them. And I know in my heart the right decision is to push this off a couple weeks. And yet I still feel the emotional trigger. Am I going to disappoint somebody? Does that mean I'm a bad daughter? Am I a selfish jerk for doing this? All of which could either settle in and put me on edge all day, or I could recognize that's what happened and go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not thinking about that. I'm going to do what works and what feels right for me. I know I'm a good daughter. And I know that this is the right decision. And my mom and dad can have their reaction. And when I see them 3 weeks from now, when there are less flight delays and the weather is better and I have more time to spend with them, we won't even remember the moment I made the phone call and said. So every single day, you have to practice these skills because life is always changing. Like, that's why I like thinking about it like skills. Writing words on a piece of paper is a skill. You use it every day. Scrolling through your phone is a skill. You use it and practice it every single day. Drinking a cup of water is a skill. You use it and practice every single day. Self-awareness is a skill. Recognizing when you're on edge is a skill. Knowing how to come and get back into your body and become aware of what's triggering you and then work through it and choose how to respond based on your values, that's a skill. And in life, you need to draw upon, strengthen, and practice these types of skills every single day.
So beautifully said. And thank you so much for opening up and sharing that. Because I think that's something that a lot of people, especially the last few years, have struggled with. It's people pleasing, right? Like being afraid of doing the right thing for themselves because they fear it's going to hurt somebody else. And then also regulating yourself and not creating more stress in your life, which then, you and I have both struggled with coping with substances, to help numb anxiety, stress, and that's not good either. And there's a lot of people that do that. So if you were to say you had like 1 or 2 things other than the 5-second rule that when you're feeling emotionally charged, you give yourself the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you do something to kind of get your body back to some sort of stability, like what would those things be?
Okay, so in a moment of stress, what are the top tools that you can use? I can think of a number of them. You already mentioned the first one. So the first one is the 5-second rule. Simply counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 interrupts your nervous system response and it interrupts the racing thoughts. And it gives you just a moment where you can choose what you do next. And so you could count backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and take an action to respond. Or what I often do is I count backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to stop the racing in my mind and to stop my heart from taking off in terms of flooding my body, with adrenaline and cortisol and all this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I put myself in pause. I take a deep breath and I just do nothing for a minute. Deciding not to react is a powerful way to react. Gathering yourself is a power move. And so that's number one. The second thing that you can do in moments where you get triggered or stressed or you feel the emotional wave come on, get outside, put your phone in your back pocket, preferably turn it off, and take a walk. Simply getting outside for 10 minutes will slow your breathing down. It will raise your gaze and attention on something other than the whatever situation, train wreck that just happened, or the phone call you need to make, or the text you just got. A 10-minute walk outside will work wonders in settling your mind and your body. A third thing that you can do is you can get out a blank piece of paper and you can do what I call a brain dump. Get all that crap that you're thinking out of your mind and just write and write and write, just as if you are barfing after a big night of drinking. Just barf it all out on a piece of paper. Get it out of your head. And as you stop writing, ask yourself anything else and just keep writing. And it'll just be a mishmash of stuff, but eventually you'll get it out of your head and your body and you will calm down. A fourth thing that you can do, if you have a bathtub, you can draw a bath, and soaking in a hot tub will stimulate your vagus nerve and it will settle your body. A fifth thing that you could do is you can run a cold shower and step into a cold shower. Let me tell you something. I don't care how horrible that text was that your ex just sent you. If you step into a cold shower, it is so shocking that the only thing that your brain and your nervous system will pay attention to is the cold shower. Get in there and stand in there for 30 seconds to a minute and breathe through it. And something miraculous will happen. You will literally feel a flood wash over your body. Those are 5 free things that you can do that will help you take control in a moment where life has triggered you and made you scared or anxious or freaked out or whatever. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for checking this video out. And if you like this one, I have a feeling you're going to like this one too. I'll see you there.